This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz, and I'm so excited to be speaking with Tom Goodman-Hill about Baby Reindeer. How are you, Tom?
I'm really good, thanks, Dave. Lovely to be talking to you.
Can you tell me what drew you to this project originally and what your expectations were for how many people might watch it?
Very good question. Yeah, I was initially sent episode four, Darren's, first episode, and I was just struck by the incredible strength of the writing. What an original story it was. I'd never seen anything written the way this was written, not only just about what it was written, and there's such an incredible, strong emotional through line to the whole episode. And the moment I started thinking about Darrien, I just knew that I didn't want anyone else to play him. And as to how many people were going to watch it, that really wasn't on my radar at the time. And I think you go into every project hoping people will watch it. I think I probably said to quite a lot of people, I don't know if anyone's going to watch this. It's pretty dark, and so the shock of the global impact was just huge, immense, and testament to how great the writing is and how great the work that everybody's doing on the show is. And that's a thrill, a complete surprise and thrill.
Definitely an interesting role, but also not necessarily an ideal one. I feel like there are some bad associations people who haven't seen you in other things or met you in person might have with you, which it just how do you go to that kind of place?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm lucky that I've been doing this for 30 years and I've never yet had to play anyone quite like Darrien. And so the nice thing is people know that that's not what I'm really like. So that's a good thing. But getting there was, I guess, you approach it the way you approach any part. You look at the writing and you just start trying to build the character scene by scene and trying to work out what drives him, trying to work out what his motivations are, and also trying to work out what it is about him that isn't the villain. And I think with Darrien in particular, that's incredibly important because he's not what you would call a comic book villain. He's a real human being, and he's a human being that is a serial abuser. You know, uh, Donnie is not his only victim. I think of that we can be very sure. And so, there's got to be humanity to him. There has to be humor and empathy and compassion mixed in with all that self-regard, ego, and psychopathy. And so you have to slowly build up layer by layer how each of those elements of his personality play, bubble to the top, sink away again, disappear altogether. And that was an incredibly complex process. I mean, it's such an intense episode, episode four in particular. It's so intense. The journey it's like breakneck pace, the journey that you go on. But there's so much happening and so much development in the relationship between Darren and Donnie. It's like a film's worth of occurrence and meat, and that was tough. I mean, we were in a difficult place for weeks because it's a two-hander really, that episode, and me and Richard were just in there. There was no escape from it, and that was, in terms of the work, is very good. In terms of our own personal health and well-being, was really tough. There was a lot of hand-holding and a lot of talking, a lot of counseling, and a lot of crying in my wife's lap.
Think it is that episode four really is a game changer in a lot of ways, but also episode one sets such an incredible pace for the show. And it's hard, I think, coming in at this point after Martha, just Jessica makes such a big and memorable entrance.
Yeah.
Did you know, like, had you read scripts for episodes one through three? Did you know about all that, or were you taking this sort of separately?
So I obviously began just with episode four because that's what I had, and then I was sent the rest, and so I read the whole thing, obviously. And it's just astonishing writing from start to finish. I was completely blown away because obviously I was thinking about Darren, and I was thinking about Martha because I knew of Martha, but I was blown away by the family episodes. I just had no idea that was coming as well, and so I just the richness of the scripts was just extraordinary. So that yeah, I just going into it, I guess I just had to think about the fact that Darrien's story precedes everything else, and so I kind of had to think about where Donnie is at that point, how naive he is, how full of energy he is, what raw talent he is, and what Darrien seeks to gain from that young man, what he wants out of him, because he just feeds off him, and that is so dark and dangerous and disturbing that you just sort of have to build that and not think about the things that come after, because they happen, outside of Darrien's, mind and experience.
Richard is obviously an incredible storyteller, but he's also very fascinating to watch on screen. Do you think that this role will define him so strongly for the future, or we'll see interesting new things from him after this?
He is a consummate artist. I think we're going to see a lot from Richard Gadd. He's an extraordinary actor and an amazing performer, and he's magnetic. His charisma is extraordinary. So yeah, we're going to see a lot more from Richard. Never fear.
Have you, aside from just knowing that so many people have watched this show, have you, been recognized as Darrien out in public? Have you heard from read, what people have been saying about him as a character of that episode?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of lucky because at the time that the show came out, my wife was working like full time, and so I was doing like daddy daycare the whole time, and so the only thing I really had to deal with was the school run. And so that was pretty weird. Yeah, the looks I got dropping my 5-year-old at school was pretty crazy. But apart from that, I kind of hid. I'd made a decision not to do press before the show opened. Not just because of the subject matter, but also because Darrien is something of a spoiler, really. The whole point of Darrien appearing when he does is that you have no idea you're going to see that. So I was very happy that I'd really sunk into the background on the launch of the show, and that it was a huge surprise to people that part of the story and that the fact that I was playing him was there, because he's so unlike anything I've done before. I mean, I haven't come close to playing anything like Darrien in 30 years. So that was yeah, that was a huge surprise to people. But luckily, they know I'm not that guy.
I know that the Emmy Awards and other award bodies have specific categories for limited series like this. Does it feel more like you're a supporting actor or you're a guest actor, given how much of the show that you appear in?
God, I don't know. I sort of never really think of it in those terms. I think you just kind of, you pick up the script. If you love it, you do the job, and anything that comes after is just a cherry. And so I'm just astonished to be in that category with the people I'm in there with. It's just amazing, and I'm thrilled that it's happening to me now, when I've been working for such a long time, and to be recognized for a role that I never thought I would even play is just extraordinary. I'm just thrilled to bits.
I do want to ask you about one of your past roles, which is on a show I like a lot that I wonder how many people actually saw, especially in the US, which is Humans, a
Oh wow.
great little show where I wouldn't say your character certainly is a little bit better, but not still not the ideal, certainly not the ideal father we're looking for here.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved playing Joe. He was great. Humans is a great show, and I loved it to bits. And yeah, Joe Hawkins was yeah, he was a complex character. He just he was a good guy. He just couldn't cope with the technology around him, and he couldn't cope with the implications of artificial intelligence, and he felt threatened. He was I guess ultimately he was a little man. He didn't quite have the breadth of understanding that he needed to have in order to deal with everything that was happening with his family. But he was doing his best. He wasn't a bad guy. He was just weak, I guess.
Sure. Well, I hope that doing press for this show has allowed, you to revisit a lot of the, things you've done in your career. Are there any specific other roles or projects you wish people would ask you about more and sort of shine a light on?
Oh, do you know what? There is one, and it's and I always think about it because it's like it's the only other time where I've sort of played something that's so far removed from who I am really, and that's a show I did called The Devil's Whore, which about the English Civil War that Mark Munden directed, who directed Bob Downey Jr. in The Sympathizer, and it was a brilliant show written by Peter Flannery, who's a Geordie playwright and screenwriter from my part of the world, where I grew up in Newcastle in the north of England. And I played a character called John Lilburn, who was the leader of the Levellers. He was like a proto-communist, and he's in my family tree. I'm related to Lilburns, like way back English Civil War, and it was extraordinary to play someone that I'd heard about from when I was a child, and to actually be playing them. And I was in great company. It was like Andrea Riseborough and Dominic West and John Sim and Mike Fassbender, and we just had and Maxine Peake. We just had the most amazing time making that show, and I think I think a lot of people saw it, got critically well received, but it didn't get watched in the numbers that we all thought it would get watched in. So, but I loved that show, really loved that show, and I hope it does have a life and people see it again.
What's coming up next for you?
Next, I'm right in the middle. I'm coming to the end of shooting the first season of a show for Apple called Larkin, with Emma Thompson and Ruth Wilson, and I've had a brilliant time on that. I'm playing, and he's a slippery character actually. You're not quite sure if he's a good guy or a bad guy, and I'm having a great time shooting that, and I complete that early autumn, like right after the Emmys. Actually, I complete that, and then I'll just wait and see what happens.
Is there any kind of role that you feel like you haven't done yet that you really would like to try?
Oh man, everybody asks me that, and I never know what to say because I always say the same thing. I love new writing, and so if a script lands with me and the writing is quality and original and something I've never seen before, I will jump right at it. And you just don't know what that's going to be, and that's part of the joy of doing my job. It's the reason I've always done stage work alongside my film work, because I love new writing. Doing plays with like Lucy Prebble and Mike Bartlett and people like that are because they're great writers, and of course they go on to write for the screen. And I just new writing is what it's all about, and I love a great script. So I'll do anything if I love the script. I mean, I would never have played Darrien in a million years if the script hadn't been that script.
Well, speaking of things you love, since this is awards buzz, I love to ask, what have you been watching recently? Is there a show or a performance that you feel is particularly awards worthy?
Oh wow. Do you know what? I've got to big up Lewis Pullman. I watched Lessons in Chemistry, and I just thought he was extraordinary. I just thought he was brilliant in it. Absolutely brilliant. He blew me away.
That's a great answer. Well, thank you so much.